Life will test you. That's not a warning. It's a promise. Not because the world is against you, but because growth requires pressure. Adversity isn't optional. It's a part of the process. And the people who succeed, not just survive, but rise, are the ones who know how to face challenge without losing their center, without crumbling, without compromising who they are or where they're going. The challenges aren't the enemy. It's the way you handle them that matters. Because everyone gets hit. Everyone gets blindsided. Everyone deals with setbacks, heartbreak, loss, rejection, disappointment. But not everyone responds the same way. Some let those moments define them. Others let them refine them. And that distinction right there is the difference between staying stuck and moving forward. You don't get to control every situation. You don't get to decide what life throws at you. But you do get to decide how you respond. You do get to decide what kind of mindset you carry, what kind of person you become through it. And that choice, that response, that character you forge in the fire is where your strength is built. Most people want easier circumstances, but what they actually need is stronger principles, not soft ideas, not motivational fluff, solid rules, unbreakable ones. The kind of rules that hold you steady when everything around you is shaking. The kind of rules that make you sharper, tougher, and more focused, not just when it's convenient, but especially when it's not. These rules are not just ideas. They're tools. They're anchors. They are designed to help you hold your ground when life gets loud, to keep your vision clear when the pressure builds, to remind you of your power when you feel like everything is falling apart. And these rules don't change based on how you feel. They don't disappear when things get hard. They don't bend when fear shows up. They remain steady, strong, unshakable. That's why they work. Because when you live by principle, you don't need perfect conditions to stay centered. You don't need external comfort to move forward. You don't need everyone to understand your path. You just need to trust your foundation. These 10 rules are not abstract. They're clear, actionable, uncompromising, and they will change how you lead yourself. They will shift how you handle resistance. They will challenge your habits, your thinking, your excuses, and force you to rise. Because the truth is, most people don't need more support. They need more structure. They don't need more comfort. They need more clarity. They don't need to be rescued. They need to remember who they are. And that's what these rules are here for. To remind you, to rebuild you, to make sure that the next time life tries to break you, it finds nothing soft to land on. Rule number 1 for overcoming life's challenges: never negotiate with your commitment. When you decide to move forward, that decision has to be final, non-negotiable, immovable. Because the moment you start bargaining with yourself, the moment you open the door for debate, you weaken your resolve. You invite uncertainty. You give your excuses a seat at the table. Most people fall not because of what happened, but because of the way they allowed it to shake their decision. Their mind said yes, but their discipline said maybe. Their words were strong, but their actions were soft. And every time life pushed, they pulled back just enough to stay busy, but not committed. Just enough to look serious, but never break through. You can't move like that. Not if you want to overcome what life throws at you. The decision to keep going cannot be conditional. It cannot depend on mood, on convenience, or on how many people are cheering. It must be based on identity, who you are, who you've decided to be. And that identity must be forged in clarity, in commitment, in finality. You have to learn how to close the door on exit routes, burn the plan B, kill the off-ramps. Because the second you allow a mental escape hatch, your mind will take it. Especially when the challenge gets heavy. Especially when the emotions rise. Especially when no one's watching. There's a moment in every hard season when the voice in your head gets louder than your vision. When fear gets louder than purpose. When tired starts sounding like reason. And in that moment, you need more than motivation. You need a commitment so deep that it silences the noise. That reminds you what you said long before you were in pain. That drags you forward even when your emotions try to pull you backward. That kind of commitment is built before the storm. It's made in silence, when no one's watching, when no one's clapping, when you're alone with your thoughts and your options. That's when you decide who you are. That's when you choose what kind of person you will be when resistance shows up. People want certainty, but what they really need is resolve. Because there's no such thing as certainty in life's battles. There's just conviction. And conviction is born from commitment. Not the kind you announce to the world, the kind you whisper to yourself when no one else believes it yet. The kind that feels like truth in your bones. You can't afford to negotiate with your standards. You can't afford to renegotiate your goals just because life got loud. You can't afford to lower your effort to match your feelings, because those are the exact moments that build or break your character. Those are the moments that separate those who talk about resilience from those who actually live it. And when you stop negotiating with your commitment, everything else begins to align. Your habits get tighter, your language gets sharper, your distractions start to fade. Because you've locked in, you've made the choice, and every part of you begins to follow that lead. But this only works if you mean it. You can't say you're committed and keep entertaining the things that contradict that. You can't say you're focused and keep feeding the patterns that distract you. You can't say you're serious and keep acting like success is optional. This is not about intensity. It's about clarity. It's about deciding that the word quit is no longer part of your vocabulary. That when life gets heavy, you don't reconsider, you recommit. That when things go wrong, you don't panic, you double down. That when fear shows up, you don't run, you hold the line. Because holding the line when it's hard builds something in you that no easy season ever could. It builds depth, it builds confidence, it builds authority, not over others, over yourself. And self-leadership is the highest form of leadership there is. When you stop negotiating with your commitment, you don't need perfect conditions. You create momentum in the middle of the mess. You build progress when the path isn't clear. You create opportunity even when doors are closing. Because you've decided that forward is the only direction. And that decision becomes your foundation. So the next time resistance shows up, and it will, remember this rule. Don't ask yourself if it's worth it. Don't ask yourself if you're ready. Don't ask if it's fair or if it's easier for someone else. You already made the decision. You already said yes. And your actions will now reflect that truth. That kind of commitment is rare, but it's required. Because when you stop negotiating with your commitment, you don't just survive life's challenges. You rise because of them. You get stronger through the storm. You build something that lasts. And the next time someone asks you how you overcame, you won't say it was luck. You'll say it was a decision you never took back. Rule number 2 for overcoming life's challenges: own everything. Especially when it would be easier to blame. The fastest way to give away your power is to blame your circumstances, your past, your environment, the people who didn't support you, the things that didn't go your way, because the moment you start pointing outward, you stop looking inward, and that's where all your power lives. Blame is seductive. It feels like relief. It creates the illusion of clarity. It allows you to say, it's not my fault. But here's the problem. Every time you choose blame, you trade responsibility for temporary comfort. And when the comfort fades, you're left with the same results, the same patterns, the same story. Responsibility isn't about guilt. It's about freedom. Because when you take ownership of your mindset, your reactions, your choices, you regain control. You don't wait for someone else to change. You don't wait for the perfect opportunity. You stop saying, like, I can't because, and start asking, what can I do with what I have? Owning everything doesn't mean everything is your fault. It means everything is your opportunity. You didn't choose what happened, but you choose what it means. You didn't cause every setback, but you choose how you respond. You didn't design every challenge, but you choose how long you stay stuck in it. And this shift in ownership changes how you experience pain. You stop seeing it as punishment. You start seeing it as process, as preparation, as pressure that produces strength. When something breaks down, you don't collapse. You investigate. You ask better questions. You extract the lesson. You make it mean something useful. The people who overcome challenge consistently are not the ones who avoid adversity. They're the ones who take full ownership of the experience. They don't waste energy playing victim. They don't let resentment run their day. They don't justify their inaction. They say, this is where I am. This is what I've got. Now here's what I'm going to do about it. That level of responsibility is rare. Most people want support more than they want solutions. They want comfort more than they want clarity. But clarity only comes when you look in the mirror. When you stop waiting for someone else to fix it and decide that your response is your responsibility. You can't grow if you don't take full responsibility for your life. Not the idea of it, the reality. That means your attitude, your habits, your energy, your words, your focus, your reaction when things go wrong. That's all you. And the sooner you own that, the sooner you start changing things that used to feel unchangeable. You stop saying, that's just how I am, and start asking, is how I'm living helping me get where I want to go? You stop waiting for closure and start creating it. You stop waiting for permission and start leading yourself forward. That's power, not pretending to be perfect, but refusing to stay powerless. Because as long as you keep blaming, you keep reliving the same pain, the same frustration, the same cycle. You can't build a new life while holding on to old excuses. You can't grow into who you're meant to be while defending who you used to be. You can't lead others until you learn to lead yourself. And leading yourself starts with ownership. Ownership when it's messy. Ownership when it's hard. Ownership when no one's watching. Ownership when it would be easier to point fingers and disappear into self-pity. That's when it counts. That's when character is tested, and that's when growth begins. People will misunderstand you. They'll think you're cold, that you're too intense, that you don't let things go. But what they don't see is that your standards come from your vision, that your focus comes from your freedom, that your lack of excuses is not arrogance, it's alignment. Owning everything doesn't mean being perfect. It means being honest. It means having the humility to say, I missed that. and the strength to ask, what's next? It means you stop rehearsing the story of how you got here, and you start writing the story of what you're building now. And once you live that way, the old stories lose their grip. You stop trying to win sympathy and start building strategy. You stop needing everyone to agree with you and start respecting yourself enough to act, even when no one claps. That's what real ownership looks like. Not loud, not defensive, not self-righteous, but rooted, grounded, strong. The kind of strength that says, I'll own this mess because I plan to fix it. I'll own this challenge because I'm going to beat it. I'll own this moment because it's shaping who I am becoming. Rule number 3 for overcoming life's challenges. Stop waiting to feel ready. You don't need permission to begin. You don't need perfect confidence. You don't need every step mapped out. The people who overcome aren't the ones who have all the answers. They're the ones who start anyway, who move while it's messy, who act while it's uncertain, who walk into the unknown and build clarity on the way. The biggest lie most people believe is that they'll take action when they feel prepared, when they're not scared, when they're motivated, when everything makes sense, but that moment rarely comes. Because fear doesn't leave before you act. It leaves because you act. Waiting to feel ready is how dreams die. It's how potential is wasted. It's how years pass with no real progress. Because every time an opportunity shows up, hesitation steals it. Every time the window opens, doubt shuts it. And what's left is frustration. Frustration not because life is unfair, but because you knew what to do and still didn't move. You don't need certainty to move. You need courage. Not loud courage, not hype, quiet courage. The kind that whispers, go anyway. The kind that steps forward with a shaky voice. The kind that walks into a room full of unknowns and says, I belong here, even when your stomach says otherwise. You gain confidence by keeping promises to yourself, and you keep those promises by acting before you're fully comfortable. Because progress doesn't wait for perfect confidence. It rewards consistency. And confidence is built by showing up scared, unsure, insecure, and doing it anyway. The breakthrough is not in your feelings, it's in your follow-through. Because your feelings will change, your fears will fluctuate, but your decisions, your consistent action can be steady, can be unshakable, can lead you forward through storms, setbacks, rejection, and doubt. Most people think they need clarity to begin, but clarity is a reward. It's earned through experience, through doing, through failing, through adjusting, through learning by doing, not by sitting still, waiting to know enough. There are people with half your talent, half your ideas, half your vision, doing twice as much with their life. Why? Because they stopped waiting. They started building. They started trying. They started moving before they felt qualified. And the movement created the momentum. The commitment created the confidence. And every time you delay, you strengthen the hesitation. Every time you pause instead of pushing, you train your brain to stay put. Every time you tell yourself later, you build a life of never. Because hesitation becomes habit, and that habit becomes a lifestyle. The only way to beat it is to act faster, to shorten the gap between thought and action, between inspiration and execution, between knowing and doing. And the people who master this rule, the ones who don't wait to feel ready, they rise faster, they grow quicker, they learn more. This rule doesn't mean you move without thinking. It means you stop overthinking. It means you stop waiting for conditions to be perfect, for approval to show up, for fear to disappear, for certainty to hold your hand, because none of those things are coming and you don't need them. You need to make the move, write the thing, say the words, make the cut, commit to the decision, step out of the loop of analysis and into the rhythm of action. That's where growth lives. That's where your future's built, not in your mind, but in your movement. And when you live this way, when you stop waiting, you become dangerous. Not because you know everything, but because you're willing to find out. Not because you never fall, but because you always get up. Not because the fear isn't there, but because you've stopped asking for its permission. Your life doesn't begin when the fear ends. It begins when you stop being ruled by it. When you see it, hear it, feel it, and move anyway. And in that movement, everything changes. The momentum builds. The fear quiets. The energy rises. Because now you're no longer a thinker. You're a doer. Action is your advantage. Because action builds skill. Action creates opportunity. Action opens doors. Not planning, not preparing, not pondering. Doing. And the next time your mind says, you're not ready, you'll answer with action. You'll prove it wrong, not by arguing, but by executing. Because that's how winners move. They don't wait to feel like it. They move until it feels normal. They move until hesitation loses its voice. Rule number 4 for overcoming life's challenges. Protect your focus like your life depends on it, because it does. Focus isn't just about getting things done. It's about what you allow your life to be shaped by. Because where your focus goes, your energy flows. And where your energy flows, your results grow. When you're facing a challenge, the number one thing that determines how fast you move forward is what you choose to focus on. Not what's happening around you, not what people are saying, not even what went wrong. It's what you fix your eyes on in the middle of it. Do you obsess over the problem, or do you lean into the solution? Most people don't protect their focus. They react, they vent, they distract themselves. They multitask. They chase clarity while letting noise surround them all day long. And they wonder why they feel stuck, exhausted, overwhelmed. It's not because they're broken. It's because their focus is being hijacked. If your attention is fragmented, your progress will be too. If your mind is constantly shifting between what matters and what doesn't, you'll never find momentum. Because momentum isn't created by doing more. It's created by doing less with more focus. Focus is a decision, not a trait, not a feeling, a choice. A choice you make daily. To tune out the noise, to ignore the distractions, to stop giving energy to conversations, people, and inputs that don't move you forward. You have to be ruthless because everything is fighting for your attention. The phone, the TV, your past, your ego, your insecurities. If you don't build a system that protects your focus, life will hand you 1,000 reasons to waste it. And the people who overcome challenges consistently, they don't have fewer problems. They have fewer distractions. They've trained themselves to zoom in, to keep their eyes locked on what matters, to give their best energy to the few things that actually move the needle. That kind of focus is rare, not because it's impossible, but because it's uncomfortable. It means saying no. It means being misunderstood. It means going quiet when the world wants you to be loud. It means building in silence, working in stillness, moving with intention. But when you protect your focus, everything sharpens. Your thinking, your pace, your confidence. Because now you're not reacting to life. You're creating it. You're no longer pulled in every direction. You're walking with alignment. And alignment creates acceleration. Focus isn't about intensity. It's about clarity. It's about deciding this is what matters. This is what I'm building, and everything else can wait. And when you live like that, distractions lose their power. You stop being a victim of urgency. You stop wasting your life on things that feel important, but aren't. You don't need more time. You need less noise. You don't need to do more. You need to get sharper with what you choose to do. You don't need another productivity hack. You need fewer decisions, stronger boundaries, and a clear target. So ask yourself, what's pulling your focus right now? What's stealing your energy? What's cluttering your mind? Where are you giving time out of habit, not alignment? Where are you letting urgency replace importance? That's the battlefield. And if you win there, you win everywhere. Every breakthrough starts with a decision to focus. You can't lead yourself if your focus is fractured. You can't grow through pressure if your attention is divided. You can't rise in hard seasons if your energy is leaking in 10 different directions. So you simplify, you eliminate, you build guardrails, you say no more often, you stop explaining your focus to people who benefit from your distraction. You stop apologizing for being unavailable. Because protecting your focus isn't selfish. It's necessary. And once you lock in, you begin to feel it. Momentum, progress, peace. Not because life got easier, but because you stopped being pulled off course. You stopped letting everything in. You stopped letting everyone have access to your energy. And now your focus works for you instead of against you. Rule number 5 for overcoming life's challenges. Build your mindset before you need it. Because when adversity shows up, it's too late to start training. It's too late to learn how to think clearly. Too late to begin building resilience. The storm will reveal what you've already built, not what you meant to build. Most people don't think about mental conditioning until life hits them. They wait until the pressure rises, until the deadline is looming, until something falls apart. And then they scramble for clarity, for strength, for motivation. But if you wait until the challenge shows up to train your mind, you'll default to your old wiring. And old wiring only knows survival, panic, avoidance, excuses. You'll start reacting instead of responding. You'll fall into old loops, old habits. You'll look for the path of least resistance instead of the path of alignment. That's why this rule matters. You don't wait for hard times to develop discipline. You build discipline so that when life gets hard, you already have it. You don't wait for chaos to build clarity. You build clarity so that when chaos comes, you don't break. Your mindset is your operating system. Every challenge is a stress test. Every obstacle is a pressure point. And when the weight increases, you will not rise to the occasion. You will fall to the level of your preparation. So what do? You condition your mind like a fighter. You rehearse pressure before it comes. You practice holding the line. You practice saying no. You practice showing up when you don't feel like it. Because those reps build something deeper than motivation. They build identity. When you train your mind daily, you don't get surprised by setbacks. You get refined by them. You don't panic when you're under pressure. You perform. You don't get derailed by fear. You see it, acknowledge it, and move anyway. because your mindset was built for this. You prepared. This isn't about being robotic. It's about being resilient. It's about building thought patterns that serve you, not sabotage you. It's about deciding every day how you'll lead yourself when things go wrong. And then practicing that mindset like your life depends on it, because it does. You don't have to wait for adversity to build strength. Every single day is a training ground. When you wake up tired and show up anyway, you're training. When you choose discipline over comfort, you're training. When you challenge your negative thinking instead of surrendering to it, you're training. And each of those reps adds up. You start to notice that fear doesn't have the same hold, that failure doesn't feel like the end, that frustration doesn't make you fold, because now you've built new defaults, stronger ones, ones that aren't built on emotion, but on values. This is the difference between people who endure and people who rise. The ones who rise didn't avoid adversity. They prepared for it. They built a mindset that wouldn't collapse under weight. A mindset that doesn't need constant affirmation to stay committed. A mindset that keeps promises whether it's easy or not. You build that kind of mindset through repetition, through exposure, through reflection. You feed your mind what it needs: books, mentors, environments, standards. You stay around people who don't flinch under pressure. You stop entertaining conversations that reinforce weakness. And you study yourself. You notice what triggers you, what distracts you, what patterns you fall into. And then you challenge them. You set traps for your excuses. You hold the mirror up daily. You make truth your default, not your fallback. And when you do this long enough, something powerful happens. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries to be strong. You see yourself as someone who already is, because your mindset isn't theory anymore. It's been tested. It's been proven. It's been earned. Rule number 6 for overcoming life's challenges: let go of needing to be understood. If you are going to grow, if you're going to evolve, if you're going to stretch past who you used to be, there will be people who won't get it. There will be people who question your path, misunderstand your decisions, and mislabel your commitment. And if you need their understanding to move forward, you'll stay stuck. You have to accept that not everyone will see your vision. Not everyone will hear what you hear. Not everyone will understand the moves you're making, because they weren't built to carry the same assignment you were. They weren't given the same vision, and their approval isn't required for your progress. This rule is hard because as humans, we crave connection. We want validation. We want to be seen and supported. But there comes a point when you have to choose between being understood and being aligned. And growth requires alignment more than agreement. You'll feel the tension, the silence from people who used to cheer for you, the distance from those who once felt close, the questions from people who want you to explain every step, every decision, every boundary. And it's tempting to slow down, to explain, to soften your path, to justify your growth, but you can't. Because the more energy you spend trying to be understood, the less energy you have for execution. The more time you spend trying to be accepted, the less time you spend moving forward. And the more you try to make everyone feel comfortable with your evolution, the more you betray your own momentum. The people who are meant to walk with you will adapt. They'll catch on. They'll ask better questions. They'll rise with you. But some won't. Some will feel threatened. Some will project their own insecurities onto your choices. Some will try to guilt you back into who you used to be. You're not responsible for their fear. You're not responsible for their perception. You're responsible for your own alignment. And your peace cannot be held hostage by someone else's confusion. You can't grow while constantly shrinking yourself for someone else's approval. So you learn to keep walking, even when the cheers go quiet, even when the questions get louder, even when the relationships shift. You stop trying to be understood and start focusing on being consistent. Because consistency is louder than explanation. Results are louder than reassurance. And time will make things clear. The people who truly know you don't need every detail to believe in you. The people who are growing with you won't be surprised when you change. They'll expect it. They'll celebrate it. And the people who can't handle it, that's not your burden. That's their choice. You don't need to be angry. You don't need to cut people off with bitterness. You just stop asking for permission to grow. You stop needing applause to evolve. You stop expecting everyone to applaud when you stop playing small. That's not ego. That's maturity. That's leadership. That's understanding that not every conversation needs closure. That not every change requires consensus. That not every version of your past will make it into your future. And when you truly live this rule, something shifts inside of you. You find a new kind of freedom. The freedom to follow your calling without permission. The freedom to build your life with conviction instead of consensus. The freedom to stop waiting for people to catch up before you move forward. You no longer fear being misunderstood because you're no longer trying to be predictable. You're trying to be aligned. And alignment doesn't always look like approval. It often looks like solitude, like silence, like decisions made in quiet based on vision, not validation. This is what growth demands, that you move even when no one claps, that you stay true even when the room gets small, that you hold your standard even when it makes others uncomfortable, because your growth is not a group project, and your destiny doesn't require consensus. Rule number 7 for overcoming life's challenges. Never make long-term decisions from short-term emotions. Pain is real, fear is real, frustration is real, but none of those feelings are permanent. And when you make decisions from a temporary emotional state, you almost always create permanent regret. Most people don't fail because of the adversity. They fail because of how they respond to it. In the heat of disappointment, they quit. In the face of rejection, they shrink. In the midst of anger, they say things they can't unsay. And by the time the emotion fades, the damage is done. You have to build a pause into your process, a space between stimulus and response, a moment where you check your emotions, check your intentions, and ask, will this decision still make sense tomorrow? Next week? Next year? That pause can save your future. That pause can protect your character. That pause can preserve your vision. Strong people feel deeply, but they don't lead from impulse. They lead from principle. They lead from clarity. They train themselves to respond with purpose, not reaction. And that level of control doesn't make them less human. It makes them more effective. You can't overcome life's biggest challenges if you're constantly reacting to your emotions. Emotions are signals, not dictators. They inform you. They point to something, but they should never take the wheel. Because feelings are fluid. They rise and fall And if you make a permanent move in the middle of a passing emotion, you may lose something you can't get back. You don't need to suppress your emotions. You need to process them, sit with them, understand them. But don't let them lead your life. Don't let fear decide your next step. Don't let shame keep you silent. Don't let anger drive the conversation. Every time you lead with emotion instead of alignment, you drift, you veer off track, you forget who you are. You say or do something that doesn't reflect your values, and then you're left cleaning up the aftermath. Not just externally, but internally. Because now you're carrying regret. And the cost of those moments isn't just the damage, it's the distraction, the time you lose, the peace you lose, the energy you waste, the momentum you compromise. That's what impulse does. It creates fires you didn't need to fight. So you build a system for checking your state. You create space to breathe, to think, to reframe. You don't respond when you're in the storm. You don't decide when your vision is clouded. You wait for clarity, not because you're avoiding action, but because you're protecting your path. High performers aren't robotic. They're responsible. They know how to pause, how to regulate, how to wait for the emotion to pass before the decision is made, and that patience, that discipline. That's what keeps them aligned when everything around them is chaotic. You train for this. Every time you feel the rise of anger and choose presence, every time you feel the sting of criticism and choose poise, every time fear whispers retreat and you choose to hold the line. That's how you build the emotional muscle that lets you lead yourself through challenge. Because leadership starts inside. And if you can't lead your emotional responses, you can't lead your results. You can't stay consistent. You can't protect your priorities. You'll spend your life reacting and then repairing. But when you master this rule, when you stop making long-term decisions from short-term emotions, you start playing the long game. You start moving with wisdom. You start leading from alignment, not anxiety. And you stop losing momentum over temporary storms. Rule number 8. For overcoming life's challenges, don't confuse progress with comfort. Just because something feels good doesn't mean it's good for you. And just because something feels uncomfortable doesn't mean it's wrong. Growth and comfort rarely live in the same space. And if you choose comfort every time you face a challenge, you'll miss the very thing that was designed to make you stronger. Success doesn't feel like success while it's happening. It feels like tension, like frustration, like repetition, like failure that keeps testing whether or not you'll quit. And if you're judging your path by how easy it feels, you'll give up on the hard things long before they give you the result. Most people say they want change, but what they really want is change without discomfort. They want transformation without pressure, growth without disruption. But that's not how it works. You can't stretch without stress. You can't expand without resistance. You can't rise without letting go of the things that kept you grounded in an old version of yourself. And yet when discomfort hits, most people interpret it as a sign that something's wrong, that they should stop, that it's too much, that they're not ready. But discomfort is not a sign that you're failing. It's a sign that you're in motion, that you're stepping into something new, that you're no longer operating at the same level. The key is learning how to sit in it, how to breathe in it, how to work through it instead of running from it. Because discomfort is data. It's feedback. It shows you where you're being stretched, where you're being refined, where the breakthrough is trying to happen. You can't break through if you're not willing to be broken down first. The old thinking, the old habits, the old patterns. They all have to be challenged. And that challenge doesn't feel like inspiration. It feels like friction, like the exact opposite of what we're told growth should feel like. But once you rewire your relationship with discomfort, everything changes. You stop seeking the easy way. You stop avoiding the hard things. You stop expecting things to feel good before you commit. You learn to embrace discomfort, not as punishment, but as the price of elevation. You begin to lean into it, to trust it. You say, this feels hard. Good. That means I'm moving. You say, this isn't easy, but I'm not here for easy. You stop trying to escape the weight and you start training under it. Because the weight builds your capacity. The pressure builds your focus. The tension builds your clarity. That's the difference between people who rise and people who stay stuck. The ones who rise stop expecting comfort to confirm their progress. They learn to track progress differently, by effort, by consistency, by alignment, by how often they do what they said they would do, regardless of how they feel. Comfort will lie to you. It will convince you that staying still is safe, that waiting is wise, that letting go of your standard is necessary. But all comfort really does is keep you trapped in cycles of regret, of wondering what could have happened if you just held on a little longer. So you flip the switch. You stop chasing comfort. You start chasing capacity. You start building a life where effort isn't something you fear. It's something you respect. You start showing up for the process, not the reward. You learn to love the work, even when the result isn't visible yet. And slowly, the discomfort becomes familiar. Not easier, but less scary, because now you expect it. You welcome it. You know it means something real is happening, that you're being developed, that your mindset is shifting, that your limits are being tested, not to expose you, but to expand you. Every challenge in your life is asking you one thing. Can you stay in the discomfort long enough for the growth to complete? And most people can't. Not because they aren't capable, but because they keep escaping the discomfort right before it does its job. But you've chosen a different path. You're learning how to breathe through the hard parts, how to lead yourself through the fire, how to keep showing up even when everything in you wants to run. And that discipline, that commitment, that mindset is what makes you unshakable. Rule number 9 for overcoming life's challenges. Don't expect discipline to feel natural. It must be trained. Most people assume that the people who follow through are simply wired differently, that they're naturally motivated, that they were born with more focus, more clarity, more drive. But that's not the truth. The truth is, they trained it, they built it, they worked for it when it was inconvenient, when it was uncomfortable, when it felt forced. Discipline is not something you feel. It's something you do. It's not a mood. It's a decision. And it's not built by doing what's easy. It's built by doing what's necessary, especially when it's inconvenient, especially when you don't feel like it, especially when there's every reason to back off and you move anyway. You train discipline like a muscle, with reps, with resistance, with structure. And the people who make it look effortless are the ones who did it on the days you didn't see, the early mornings, the late nights, the weekends when everyone else was sleeping in. They weren't more gifted. They were more committed. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, your discipline gets stronger. Every time you act in alignment with your values, instead of your feelings, your resolve gets clearer. Every time you take a step forward without needing applause, without needing to be in the mood, without waiting for inspiration, you reinforce that this is who you are now. And here's what no one talks about. Discipline often feels unnatural at first because it contradicts everything that comfort has conditioned you to believe. Comfort says rest. Discipline says move. Comfort says you've earned it. Discipline says the work still matters. Comfort says you'll do it tomorrow. Discipline says your word is today. But the more you practice, the more normal it becomes. And over time, what felt like a fight becomes your flow. What felt like resistance becomes routine. What felt like sacrifice becomes structure. That's when you stop needing motivation and start trusting your habits. The reason this rule is unbreakable is because every challenge you'll ever face will attempt to break your rhythm. It will try to pull you off track. And if your discipline is only conditional, if it only shows up when it's easy, it will collapse under pressure. But if it's trained, it holds. And when your discipline holds, you're dangerous. Because now your life isn't dictated by emotion. It's directed by intention. You no longer waste energy deciding whether or not you'll do the thing. You just do it. You no longer need someone to check on you. You've become self-accountable. That kind of consistency is what builds trust with yourself, with your team, with your future. Because people may doubt your talent, but they can't argue with your consistency. People may not always agree with you, but they will respect your ability to stay grounded when others flinch. Discipline gives you an edge, not because it's flashy, but because it's rare. Most people negotiate with their excuses. They talk themselves out of their own potential. But when you become someone who follows through, not once, not when it's easy, but always, you stand out, quietly, powerfully. And that's the key. Discipline doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It just needs to be consistent. A quiet force that moves you forward when no one else can see it. A decision that becomes identity. A practice that becomes automatic. If you're serious about overcoming challenge, this is non-negotiable. Because success doesn't go to the smartest, the fastest, or even the most passionate. It goes to the most consistent. The ones who show up when others flinch. The ones who keep going when it's boring. The ones who get better. Not because they feel like it, but because they said they would. Rule number 10 for overcoming life's challenges. Turn pain into purpose, or it will turn into poison. Everyone gets hurt. Everyone gets blindsided. Everyone experiences something unfair, unexpected, or unexplainable. Pain is part of the process, but what you do with it determines whether it becomes the reason you stay stuck or the fuel that pushes you forward. Pain unprocessed becomes bitterness. It becomes resentment. It becomes a story that plays on repeat, one that keeps your identity tied to the event instead of your future. But when pain is processed with clarity and intention, it becomes a weapon, not to harm, but to build, to strengthen, to sharpen. Most people either avoid pain or dwell in it. They pretend it didn't happen, bury it beneath busyness, or relive it constantly until it becomes a personality trait. Neither of those responses create healing. Neither creates growth. Growth comes from purpose, from asking, what is this teaching me? Instead of, why did this happen to me? Pain can shape you without destroying you. It can harden your resolve without hardening your heart. It can sharpen your instincts without dulling your hope. but only if you face it. Only if you extract the wisdom instead of carrying the wound. Only if you choose to build something useful from it. You don't have to pretend it didn't hurt. You don't have to fake strength, but you do have to decide what it's going to mean. You do have to take responsibility for what happens next, because your challenge isn't just what happened, it's what you're going to do with it now. Your story is not defined by your pain, it's defined by your response to it. And some of the strongest people you'll ever meet didn't avoid adversity. They just refused to let it have the final word. They didn't let it become their identity. They turned it into insight, into fuel, into a reason to rise. You do that by telling the truth, not just to others, but to yourself. You admit what happened. You admit how it felt. You admit what it cost. And then you choose, intentionally, fiercely, and unapologetically to heal, to learn, to transform. Not because it's easy, but because you're not willing to stay broken for the rest of your life. This rule isn't about turning pain into positivity. It's about turning it into power. A grounded, clear, steady kind of power. The kind that doesn't need to be loud to be strong. The kind that carries wisdom. The kind that becomes the foundation for everything else. When you turn pain into purpose, your past doesn't hold you back. It pushes you forward. Your scars don't weaken you. They remind you that you've survived, that you've endured, that you've walked through fire and came out stronger, not softer, not smaller, but stronger. You may not have chosen the pain, but you get to choose the meaning, and meaning changes everything. It gives the pain a job. It gives the wound a reason. It gives the pressure a path. So it doesn't sit in your soul like a weight. It moves through your life like a catalyst. The most powerful people you'll meet are not the ones who've avoided pain. They're the ones who faced it and chose not to be defined by it. They're the ones who didn't run from the challenge, but used it to find a deeper version of themselves. You can do the same. You can look at everything you've walked through, the betrayal, the loss, the delay, the disappointment, and instead of letting it become your ceiling, you let it become your floor. The foundation you build from, the platform you lead from, the testimony you speak from. But you have to decide that the pain ends with you, that the cycle ends with you, that the story changes because you were brave enough to rewrite it. You didn't wait for healing to find you. You chased it. You created it. You embodied it. This is what transformation looks like. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's a quiet, consistent, grounded refusal to let your past write the rest of your life. It's a decision to live forward, to act with clarity, to lead with depth, and to turn every moment of pain into a reason to rise higher. You've been through the storm. You've been tested. You've been stretched. And now you have the rules. Not suggestions, not advice. Rules, unbreakable ones. Anchors for your mindset. Standards for your behavior. Structure for your comeback. You don't have to wonder what to do when life gets heavy. You already know. You know that commitment is not a feeling, it's a decision. That ownership is not about blame, it's about freedom. That action doesn't wait on permission. That your focus shapes your future. That your mindset is built in training, not crisis. That you don't need to be understood to be aligned. That emotional regulation is leadership. That discomfort is a signal of growth. That discipline is trained. And that pain, when you face it, can become your power. These rules are not magic, but they are transformative. Because when you live by them, you stop being reactive. You stop being a passenger. You stop being someone who's hoping things get better. You become someone who makes things better, not through force, through clarity, through intention, through self-leadership. And self-leadership is the highest form of strength. Because no matter how many challenges you face, no matter how hard things get, you never lose your ability to respond. That's your edge. That's your power. You may not control the storm, but you control the standard. You control the narrative. You control what happens next. So now the question isn't, will life challenge me? It will. The question is, will I be ready? Will I respond with clarity? Will I show up with integrity? Will I act with discipline? Will I lead myself through it? And the answer, if you live by these rules, is yes. Always yes. You won't be perfect, but you'll be steady. You'll be grounded. You'll be someone who doesn't fold under pressure. Someone who stays locked in when everyone else is flinching. Someone who holds the line when it's easier to let go. That's who you've been becoming this entire time. You've got the framework, the structure, the mindset. Now it's time to apply it. Because truth without application changes nothing. Power without execution is wasted. You're not here to collect ideas. You're here to use them, to move with them, to lead with them. You don't need more time. You need to start. You don't need to feel ready. You need to act. You don't need someone to hold your hand. You need to hold the line. Because the life you want, the strength you're after, the person you're building, it's all on the other side of these rules being lived. And from now on, that's the standard. You lead, you build, you respond, you rise. Because challenges are not going away. But now, neither are you.